We're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bring news just for you. It's Thursday, April 17th here in Seoul. I'm Song Jin, and you're joining us on News Generation. Joining us this Thursday is AssistedDying.
Happy Thursday, everyone!
Happy Thursday! And Julian Kim.
Happy Thursday and good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Now, both are here to speak on behalf of those in their 20s and 30s. We're going to begin with our keyword news. Our keyword for this Thursday is clothes. Now, climate change is shaking up what we wear and when we wear it. Here in Korea, when we've long been proud of having 4 distinct seasons, the fashion industry is feeling the impact of shrinking spring and fall seasons and longer summers and winters. Major department store chains like Lotte, Shinsegae, and Hyundai are reporting lackluster growth in apparel sales. Now, spring usually kicks off with strong sales between February and March, but this year, the on-year increase was below 1% compared to the 6 to 7% growth in previous years. And industry insiders say it's tied to the weather, because in February, Korea saw its coldest temperatures in a decade, and March was sort of like a weather roller coaster with everything from snow and sudden temperature dips to t-shirt weather, making it hard to dress for the season. So Julian, did you also find yourself standing in front of your closet, not knowing what to wear because of the unpredictable weather? What would you say?
Yes, well, in general, I always find myself standing in front of a closet, spending way too much time deciding what to wear. Even just this morning, I spent a good 5 minutes in front of my closet deciding what to wear before coming to the studio today. But now, Koreans have a lot of pride in having 4 different seasons, but that comes at a cost. Having to have 4 different outfits, ranging from having dark, like really thick winter clothes to really thin summer clothes too. So therefore, every season we have to do a swap of our clothes in our closet because these clothes take up so much space in our closet. But however, due to the weather roller coasters that we've been having the last few months, we've had to we had to change from our winter jackets to our thin summer t-shirts. So it's been really hard to decide, especially because in the mornings and nights, it gets really cold. And during the day, it's been so hot. So do I bring a thick parka? Do I just bring like a light jacket? How do you decide? I don't know.
I can totally agree. By the way, are you satisfied with your outfit choice today?
Yeah, I would say so.
And Jessica, is this also like a headache for you, choosing what to wear because of this roller coaster like weather? What do you say?
I think you described it perfectly when you said we had a roller coaster weather in March, and even just recently, it's almost end of April, mid-April, and we had snow.
Just 4 days ago, right?
What is happening? But it's not so much for me a headache of the outfit choices, but there's a growing concern seeing this type of weather and hearing reports about whether we're only going to have 2 extreme seasons coming up. My fear is that we're going to have a really, really long and quick summer that's upcoming very quickly, and the transition won't be smooth and will happen too quickly, and the summer would just take over what we're experiencing right now. So that is my fear at the moment, to be honest.
Because we're seeing the visible effects of climate change as every year goes on.
Right. And every year, as you know, because you report, every year they say this is the
hottest year on record.
Exactly. Hottest summer on record. And now, even before summer has come, there have already been reports that this year we're going to have another record summer. So I think climate change is real, everyone, and I think we really should do something about it.
Definitely. Now, meanwhile, fashion retailers are also bracing for what could be an early but extreme summer heat wave, as Jessica mentioned, with temperatures already creeping past 20 degrees Celsius in some parts of the country here in Korea. And that was our keyword news for this Thursday. So we're now going to move on to our main discussion of the day. Today, we're going to talk about a topic that's on the minds of our generation a lot recently. Here's more on today's topic. Death is something we all inevitably face, but often avoid discussing. While it might feel like a distant concept for many young people, there is a noticeable shift in how our generation is approaching this part of life. More of us are talking more openly about it, and in some cases, even preparing for it. So starting off, one profession that's really getting increased attention from younger people here in Korea is closely tied to today's topic. So Julian, can you tell us what kind of job we're going to talk about?
Yes, so I was honestly very surprised to learn more about this, but funeral directors are actually gaining a lot more attention from people in our generation. Now, this profession usually used to carry a lot of social stigma, so it is surprising to see this huge shift in our generation. But when you look at our current society right now, it does make sense. Now, Korea is entering a super age society, so this career has started to get more in the spotlight. In fact, 4 out of 10 people who acquired the certificate to be a funeral director are in their 20s and 30s, and students majoring in relating fields are also in their 30s as well. Now, there also has been a steady increase in funeral service subscriptions amongst the younger generation too. For example, in one particular funeral service company, the proportion of subscribers in their 20s and 30s rose from 17% 2021 to 30% 2023.
That's quite a change. Then, Jessica, I'd like to ask you, let's kind of connect the dots. How does this growing interest in funeral directors and funeral subscription services reflect a change in the way younger generations are thinking about death?
I think it's a truly very interesting question because death always came with a very negative, even fear-causing connotations. I mean, all of us would agree it's the symbol for the unknown, the end, and also the loss and the grief, right? And to give a little bit of Korean insight on how we view death, there's a Korean proverb that says, better a living dog than a dead lion. But if I give you a direct translation, there's a saying that goes, it's better to roll in dog poop than to live in, the life. So people are very, very, very obsessed with life, and it's very precious for Korean people. And the more you try to hold on to one, I think people fear the other side. So in this case, because you care about life so much, you fear death that much, right? So I think in that case, what we're seeing is that some new trends are emerging in our new generation amongst the younger, particularly ours. And what better example than to have one of the panelists, which is myself. So I actually am very much immersed in death and try to think about it a lot, not only learning about it, but also experiencing it. So actually a couple of months ago, I followed the well-dying trend of our generation and went to the whole ritual of actually experiencing death. So that includes taking funeral photos, writing the will, and you wear this cloth that people wrap the dead body in, and you wear it, and then you just lay in the coffin while the funeral director actually does the whole procedure as if you're going through the funeral.
That sounds really eye-opening.
It was one of the most surreal experiences, but I have never experienced anything more real than that, if that makes sense. Because while you're laying there, and even when you're writing the will, people are crying and thinking about their loved ones, and you just have this silent moment to yourself, and then you realize that death is not really that far away, and also you're extremely calm when you actually face death. That's what I experienced. So I think in those moments, I think a lot of younger generation are trying to close that gap between what seems so far away and try to bring it closer, perhaps, so they feel more real about it. Yeah.
Right, because it's kind of like an instinct for us to wanting to prevent or not talk about things that we're fearful of. But nowadays, we're seeing more people like you who are actually starting to confront and talk about death more openly.
Right, I think you said it perfectly. I think people wanted to keep that distance between death and then try to focus more on the present life and try to avoid it. But these kind of experiences, you're literally putting yourself in front of it. And when you do, I think you realize how precious your life is more.
Right, and expanding on what we've just talked about, another key part of today's discussion is the growing debate over euthanasia and assisted suicide. We actually talked about this topic a couple of times on Newsden too, but more people now argue that individuals should have the right to choose when and how they die, especially in cases of extreme suffering, for example, if you are grappling with a terminal disease. So Jessica, could you also walk us through this change in perception?
Yeah, and this is another very heated debate, but also very important question, I think, in our life. Opinions have always been divided on not only the, quote, right to life, but also to what extent, and the discussion has been ongoing, not just in Korea, but globally. So now here in Korea, if we take a look at the screen, we can see the reasons that people actually were for and supported assisted suicide. Now, according to a report by Korea Institute for Health and Social Affairs, 82% of those surveyed agreed to legalization of assisted suicide. Now, if you look at the reasons, the top one was to reduce meaningless treatment, as in people don't want to suffer for long-lasting treatment. And number two, as humans, we do have the right to claim our own death. And number three, to reduce the pain of death itself. And I think we can all kind of relate to these reasons, right?
Right.
Because either we've seen someone suffer or thought about ourselves in pain at one point. And I think this is a particularly important topic for our generation because last month there was also an essay book titled I Wish Today is Tomorrow. 오늘이 내일이었으면 좋겠다. And it was actually an essay written by a daughter who detailed the process of having her mother attend the assisted suicide program in Switzerland because she was in so much pain. And when you read the essay, she details the complicated process, the emotional burden, but also the pain that the mum was going through when she couldn't have the, quote, dignified death or the choice that she wanted. So at the end of it, she writes, I wish people could have more dignified death, unlike my mother. And on it, she wrote a quote, I know it's the biggest irony, but seeing her made me realize that having the choice of death can actually be a hope for life. And when I read it, I came much, much closer to how this assisted dying program could, not always, but could actually assist someone's quality of life in some cases. Yeah.
Because I've heard some people saying that if you're in immense pain, living does not really feel like they're living.
Right. Living feels more closer to death than actually living, right? Yeah.
But on the other hand, euthanasia or assisted suicide is still a deeply controversial and emotional issue, as you mentioned in the first part of your answer. So, Julian, what are some concerns and counter arguments?
Yeah, so there are growing concerns about using euthanasia. For example, in the Netherlands, where euthanasia is legal, there has been a noticeable rise in young people using it due to psychological suffering. This has sparked public debate of whether such decision is actually truly right or even ethical. Many experts have also voiced concern that discussions around legalizing assisted suicides are gaining momentum, even though education of what constitutes as good dying is still kind of lacking. In reality, even though if someone claims it as their personal choice, for example, if the decision is driven not by wanting to be a financial burden to the family, for example, it's really hard to consider this as a dignified death. And many argue that this is more of a coerced decision than a personal decision.
Right, so it may not be 100% based on your own choice, which is what many people are concerned about.
Exactly.
So for more opinions, we also asked our viewers through a poll on our Arirang News YouTube channel with the question, should euthanasia be legal? If we looked at the results, 71% answered yes, while 29% said no. And here are 3 comments from our viewers. Our first comment for this Thursday is by Rose 512. Yes, we deserve the right to choose a dignified and peaceful end to our lives. It's a matter of personal autonomy and compassion. SKDHJ66, no, because some people may feel pressure to request euthanasia by family, friends, or doctors when it isn't what they really want. That's so sad and is something that society should prevent. Endless Curiosity 95 says it's a complex issue, so before making a decision, we should discuss what kinds of safeguards we can put in place to avoid its misuse. Absolutely. So after the break, we'll connect with a young person from Spain for a more global perspective on today's topic. Stay with us.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search our channel Arirang News. Click Community and leave a comment down below. Make a new type of news with us.
Joining us today is Spanish Gen Z Gabriel Ruiz Benito. Welcome back to the show, Gabriel.
Welcome. I'm glad to be back.
Thank you for joining us once again. So, Gabriel, we'd like to ask you, how do people your age in Spain generally view death? And can you really relate to what we discussed earlier in the show? What do you think?
Well, I can completely relate because I don't think this is about nationality. In Spain, the views are really divided on this topic. But most of us think that having a dignified death makes you live life in another way. Like, probably it's not that you're gonna take that decision, but knowing that if at some point you are in so much pain that you cannot like keep on, or like you have a very bad disease, you can end your life, or like you can choose to do it in a right way, in a painless way. Most Spanish people feel really better about that, having that option. Actually, in Spain, it's legal since 2021. But it's not being actually like used a lot because it has some problems, legally speaking. So even though it's legal, it's not being like actually being taken into account that much.
I think you partially answered the question, but I think legalization is also important. So is euthanasia or assisted suicide legally permitted in Spain? And what's the public opinion on this issue?
It is legal, but only in a very specific cases, which are very difficult to fulfill right now. You have to be proven not to have any hope of improvement in the illness that you're like having, which is really really difficult to medically prove. And also you have to be over 18 years old. You have to request for it, and then you have to wait for 15 days in order not to change your decision. And 2 doctors have to like actually give you like medical permission for it and say that like if you are a person that like it's okay to be done. So the public opinion towards this is really divided because like this is kind of a political issue and also a religious issue. And as you know, Spanish is a very Catholic country. So religious people are not like really supporting in this law. So I will say that the Spanish population is 50-50 on this.
Yeah, so the idea of dying well is gaining attention nowadays. So how would you personally define this concept?
I personally define it as an answer of our generation to the fear of death. Like we are so much in this new trend of you have to look your full, you have to live your life to the fullest. You have that we are not really close to the part of ourselves of seeing us weak, seeing us in a bed, seeing us like maybe even dying more alone because the tendency to not having families and so on is growing. So I feel people is really fearful of death. So they want to even control that part of their lives. Like young people like to feel that they have everything under control. While I think older generations were more like, well, people will take care of me, or like you had like family and friends that will take care of you at those moments. The new generation is like, I don't know, I just want to have control over my death too. So we are more like a control freaks. So that's why we want to have control over our deaths as well.
That's a very interesting point. All right, Gabriel, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts today. We appreciate it.
I appreciate it too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, I don't know about you guys, but what really struck me is how young people, those who really seem farthest from death because of our age, are actually starting to have some very meaningful and deep conversations about it. So I want to ask you, what do you think is prompting more young people to really confront mortality?
I think that's a great question because we're in our peak of life, so-called, the 20s and 30s. And I even think about death a lot. I'm one of those examples. So I think broadly speaking, there are 2 factors. And one is that our generation prioritizes quality of life above all else. We don't want to survive. We want to thrive. We want to live fully, which is Gabrielle just mentioned. And I think that also means, quote, how do I die? And instead of having uncertainty and unpredictability happen to us, I think, and Gabrielle mentioned it perfectly, we want to be able to have choice, but also control.
Right.
And in order to have control, we have to know how to die and what dying really means, right? But also because of social media and widespread information, I think we frequent death more often than we actually think about because we hear about death and accidents and suicide, and our generation grew up with so many different incidents, tragic incidents that have happened. And I think these exposures make us think more deeply about what life really means, which translates to then what is death. Yeah.
Right, so more emphasis on quality over quantity.
Quality of quantity, for sure, yes.
What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so for our generation, death is just being seen as part of our natural life. It's something that we recognize as something unavoidable, and our attitudes towards it are clearly shifting. But in my opinion, there are many factors to play with this one. Yes, chronologically, I guess we are further away from death, but that doesn't necessarily mean that death is something super distant from us.
Right.
I know many of my fellow Gen Zers can relate to this, but we started our adulthood in the midst of a global pandemic, increased climate anxiety, and ever more what feels like an increasingly unstable global world. And we started our adulthood seeing firsthand just how nothing is guaranteed. We can't prepare for anything in our future, and things can just change in a snap. So we're going to keep asking this question, what actually matters in our life? With constant exposure to loss on social media, growing mental health awareness, and evolving cultural values, it makes sense why we're reflecting really deeply on morality now. Especially in Korean society, many of us are expected to take care of our older family members. So this would inevitably force us to confront these questions early on than, let's say, later in life too.
And we want to be as prepared as much as we can.
Exactly.
And this is a question with no one-size-fits-all answer. I'm sure many of our viewers will relate to this, but I want to hear your thoughts in today's episode. What does dying well really mean to you?
I think that's a great question, and I would love to hear some answers from our viewers as well, because I think everybody has a different sort of definition.
Right.
But for me, there was a quote I wrote after my grandfather passed, and I said, "Grief is real, but so is life. And without death, life cannot be more real because it has an end."
And precious, right?
So precious, right? And I think about it from time to time, and it frightens me actually that death is something that is constantly looming over my presence and every day. But what I realized when I went through the funeral procedure and laying there in the coffin and writing my will and actually putting yourself in the position of what it means to face death, I realized there was a lot of peace and acceptance when you actually come face to face with it. So I think that's a life well lived when you can, at that moment, have that kind of serenity and acceptance. But I always say, if you want to have a good death, then you need to have a good life.
Right.
And in order to have good life, you have to live fully.
So live like today, every day. Is your last day?
It's your last day. I think that's
Live
the
it to
quote.
the fullest.
But I would hope that today isn't the last
Of
day.
course.
But I will train my brain
That
to think,
mindset, right?
that mindset, yes.
Then Julian, how do you define dying well?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Jessica has said, but I was actually 16 years old when my grandpa passed away, and his passing really forced me to think about death, especially at such a young age. I feel that was the first time in my life where I actually had to sit there and process what death really means, not just for myself, but also for my loved ones too. And so let's fast forward a couple many years now, and that question, what does it mean to die well, is something I honestly don't fully have the answer to. My current life philosophy is live life to the fullest, like how we mentioned earlier, and have control of what I want to do in life. And I am honestly very privileged and blessed to be able to say that this is what I want to do and have the opportunity to do that and pave my own path. So I think it's really crucial to use those opportunities and become the better Julian I can every single day. Like a little software upgrade every day if possible. But yeah, with my current experience, I would say dying well means just leaving a positive impact on my loved ones and friends, living a life full of gratitude, love, and being confident in what I do.
That's such a nice definition too.
Yeah, it took a long time to formulate that definition, but it'll keep changing, I'm sure,
Yeah, and we're always open to sharing your thoughts. So if you have your own definition of dying well, please leave a comment below on today's episode. And that's all we have for today, but NewsGen will be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Korea time. Special thanks to AssistedDying.
Pleasure's always mine. Thank you.
Thank you, and Julian Kim.
Thank you for having me today.
Thank you, and to our viewers, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you tomorrow on Friday. We are
News Generation.